The next time an ad pops up that feels like it reads your mind, do not shrug and say your phone is creepy, because that little joke is the cover story that keeps you calm while the meter keeps running. What is really happening is a tax system, and it is older than the internet, older than Madison Avenue, older than your country is founding. And in a few minutes you are going to see your digital life the way a medieval villager would have seen a salt shop, not as a convenience, but as a toll gate you cannot avoid. In pre-revolutionary France, salt was not a cute spice, it was survival. It preserved meat, saved food through winter, and kept armies and towns alive, which is exactly why the crown created one of the most hated taxes in Europe, the gabelle. In many regions, it was not a simple sales tax where you buy salt when you want. Households were forced to purchase a minimum amount from official stores at official prices under official oversight, and if you tried to buy cheaper salt from the wrong place, you were not being frugal, you were a criminal. People smuggled salt the way people smuggle anything that becomes unfairly gated. There were raids, informants, fines, prison, and in harsh cases men sent to the galleys to row until they broke. Here's the piece that matters for today. The gabelle worked because the crown controlled the channel. When a gatekeeper owns the legal path to something you need, the gatekeeper does not have to win an argument, it just waits you out. Now take one breath and swap one word. Replace salt with data. Not data as a tech buzzword, but the small facts your life produces without you noticing. What you tap, what you pause on, what you search when you are worried, what route you drive when you are late, what you buy, what you almost buy, what time you wake up, what time you cannot sleep, what makes you angry, what makes you feel safe, what makes you feel tempted. That is the resource the modern economy learned to tax, because it is everywhere, it is constant, and you cannot participate in normal digital life without shedding it. That is the data gabelle, and once you see it as a tax, a lot of creepy things suddenly look like plain old economics. If you like this kind of history meets mini decoding, take a second and subscribe to Stay Financial Historian, because this channel is basically built for one skill: spotting old power games when they show up in modern clothing. Here is the clean version, no poetry. Your digital life is built on toll booths, and the toll is information about you. And to keep this from turning into a long speech, I'm going to guide you with a clear path so you always know what you are listening for. First, where the toll booths are. Second, how the toll turns into real money and real leverage. Third, the next phase where it stops being about ads and starts being about scoring people. Then I will give you the 3 highest impact ways to lower your personal rate without turning into a hermit. And at the end, I will ask you one blunt question for the comments that will tell me instantly what kind of future you are willing to live with. Start with the first toll booth, the one everyone can see, the platforms. Search, social feeds, video apps, maps, email, messaging, app stores. They feel like services, and they are, but they are also collection points. The price you pay is not a single secret file labeled with your name. It is a stream of tiny signals. What you watch to the end, what you replay, what you skip, what you hover over, what you click when you are bored, what you click when you are anxious, what you type and delete, what time you open the app, where you are when you open it, even the fact that you opened it at all. None of that looks like money in your hand, which is why it is such a perfect tax. It does not hurt in one moment. It accumulates quietly. And the reason that accumulation matters is simple: cause and effect. Signals create prediction. Prediction creates leverage. Leverage changes outcomes. When a platform can predict what keeps you there, it can feed you more of it. That is not a cartoon villain plan. It is a math problem. If one kind of content keeps people watching longer, it gets promoted. If one kind of headline keeps people clicking, it spreads. If one kind of emotional tone holds attention, the system learns to serve it. That is why you can tell yourself you are going online for 5 minutes and look up and realize an hour disappeared. A medieval salt clerk could take a coin. He could not take your sense of time. A modern feed can, because time is the engine that produces more signals. Now, the second toll booth is where casual viewers usually drift. So I'm going to make it concrete fast. This is the middle layer, The trackers, measurement tools, ad exchanges, and data brokers that sit behind apps and websites like invisible clerks writing in ledgers. If that sounds technical, here is the plain English translation. You can be watched by companies you have never heard of, because the site you visited hired them to help. Help with analytics, help with ads, help with performance, help with fraud detection, help with attribution, meaning who gets credit for a sale. In the background, your browser or your app can make dozens of requests you never see. You can actually watch it happen. Open a news site on a desktop browser with a privacy extension that shows third-party connections, and you will often see a counter climbing as the page loads. Not just the site you came for, but a parade of partners. That counter is the data gabelle in motion. Each partner may collect a little: a device identifier, your general location, the page you are reading, the time, the language setting, the type of device, and sometimes more. One company can say, honestly, we only collect a little. The trick is that the system as a whole collects a lot, because the little pieces get matched. Matched is the key word. Think of it like this: if 10 different clerks each write down a different part of your description, none of them has your full face, but when they share notes, you appear. That is why the middle layer matters. It is the stitching business. And this is also why so much of the modern debate feels slippery. You ask one company, do you sell my data? And it can say, we do not sell personal information, while still letting other companies place code that observes you, still letting advertisers target you, still letting brokers build profiles. It is like a medieval tax official saying, I do not sell salt, while charging you for access to the only legal salt store and letting merchants stand outside writing down who buys what. Now, the third toll booth is the one that makes the first two hard to escape: the ecosystem controls. Your phone is operating system. The app store rules, default settings, permission prompts, login buttons, the bright accept, and the faint gray manage settings. This is where the modern gabelle stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like gravity. In theory, you can refuse. In practice, refusal is punished with friction. The site will not load unless you agree. The app nags until you give in. A feature is locked behind, turn on tracking for a better experience, and after enough friction, most people do what people have always done under unfair tolls. They comply because they need to get through the day. That quiet training, the lesson that says, stop fighting and tap yes, is the real tax, because it turns a controversial practice into a habit. Now, promised we would move from mechanics to money, so here is the wallet part, and I am going to handle it carefully because sloppy claims lose skeptical viewers. It is tempting to say, they charge different people different prices for the same thing all the time, and sometimes personalization can influence pricing, but the more consistent, provable pattern is broader and arguably more important. Data changes what you are shown, the order you are shown it in, which offers find you, what bundles you are pushed toward, how much urgency you feel, and which doors open smoothly versus which doors demand extra steps. That still changes what you pay. It changes it the way shelf placement changes what you buy in a grocery store, even if the price tag is the same. Take search results. Two people can type the same words and see different rankings. One sees the cheaper option first. Another sees the more convenient option first. Convenience costs more. Or take discounts. If a system believes you will pay full price, you may see fewer coupons. If a system believes you are price sensitive, you may see constant deals designed to keep you shopping, which can still drain you because it keeps you in buying mode. Or take urgency framing. If a system learns that countdown timers work on you, you will see more of them. Again, none of this requires a conspiracy. It requires two things: incentive and targeting. Now, let me make it visual with a scene you can picture, because scenes beat explanations. A couple sits on a couch shopping for a used SUV. Same city, same night, two phones. One person tends to buy quickly and rarely uses coupons. The other comparison shops for days and walks away if the deal feels off. Even if the sticker price is identical, the path around the price can change. One person sees a big monthly payment estimator first, because monthly framing makes expensive deals feel smaller. One person gets a chat pop-up offering easy financing. One person sees a warranty pitch before they even see the full details. Because fear sells warranties. One person gets the "Reserve Now" button with a timer, because urgency makes people stop comparing. That is not science fiction. That is a normal outcome of a system that learns what converts different kinds of shoppers. The medieval gabelle did not only raise the price of salt, it changed behavior by controlling where and how you could buy it. The data. Gabelle changes behavior by controlling the story around your choices. Now, if you are thinking, okay, but does this really go beyond ads? Here are two mini-stories that ground the stakes without turning this into a roll call of scandals. The first is retail prediction, and it is famous because it is so human. Years ago, reporting described how Target used shopping patterns to predict pregnancy, sending coupons for baby items to a teenager is home before her family knew. The lesson was not that one store is uniquely invasive. The lesson was that ordinary purchases, when analyzed at scale, reveal private life events. Once that is true, whole categories of business change. Because if you can infer a life change, you can target the moment people are most persuadable. The second is location data, and it is famous because it is so hard to unsee once you understand it. A location dataset does not have to say your name to point to you. If a device sleeps at one address every night, spends days at another address, and visits certain places on a routine, it becomes identifiable in practice. That is why the U.S. Federal Trade Commission has gone after data brokers over location data practices, including its lawsuit against Kachava. Even if you never read court filings, you can feel what is at stake. Location is not just a dot on a map. It is a biography. And now bring it back to the wallet with the third proof area that is more directly financial: driving behavior and insurance. In recent years, consumers have learned through reporting and disclosures that connected cars and apps can generate telematics data about driving patterns, and that data can be shared through data partners used in insurance and risk markets. Not every company does it the same way, and not every insurer uses the same inputs, but the direction is what matters. When behavior becomes measurable, it becomes priceable. Salt was measurable and essential, so it was taxed. Behavior is measurable and commercially valuable, so it gets taxed. Now, here is a quick pattern interrupt, because this is where most people either get defensive or get curious, and curiosity is the better move. If these companies stopped collecting and analyzing your behavior, could they still make money? Of course. They could charge subscriptions. They could sell devices at higher margins. They could run contextual ads, meaning ads based on the content of the page rather than a personal profile. They could build paid tiers where you hand over cash instead of handing over a diary. The reason surveillance became the default is not that it is the only option. It is that it is the cheapest option for them and the least painful option for you. In the moment, free feels good, and humans are wired to ignore slow costs. A medieval salt tax hurt immediately, coin by coin. The data tax hurts quietly, decision by decision, because the cost is paid in bits of identity and minutes of attention. Now, let's talk about inequality, because every durable tax system eventually creates classes of people who can minimize it and classes who cannot. In old France, the gabelle was uneven. Some provinces had exemptions, others paid brutal rates, and that unevenness fueled resentment because it was not just expensive, it was humiliating. In the digital world, we are building a similar split. People who can afford paid services, ad-free tiers, privacy tools, and time to manage settings can reduce how much they are harvested. People who cannot live in the free lane, where the toll collectors are thickest. And here is the modern twist that makes it even more corrosive. The borders are invisible. Your border might be your device type. Your border might be your zip code. Your border might be whether you are logged in. Your border might be your browsing history. And because you rarely see other people as screens next to yours, you cannot easily compare what you are being shown. That uncertainty is a feature, not a bug. If you cannot compare, you cannot prove. If you cannot prove, you cannot organize. That is how an unpopular practice stays stable, not by being loved, but by being hard to point at. Now, we move into the next phase. The one that makes the medieval metaphor stop being cute and start being serious: scoring. In medieval times, tax authorities did not just want revenue. They wanted compliance. They wanted to map risk. Who buys the required salt? Who does not? Who might be smuggling? Who has friends across the border? Today, we do the same thing with nicer words: fraud, risk, trust, and safety, ability, propensity, churn. Some scoring is useful. If someone steals your card, you want fraud detection. If a platform is fighting spam, it needs signals. The problem is that the incentive is always to expand the scoring, because sorting people is profitable. When you can sort, you can decide who gets the smooth path and who gets the obstacle course. You can decide who gets premium customer service and who gets a chatbot loop. You can decide which sellers get visibility and which sellers disappear. You can decide whose content is amplified and whose content is quietly throttled. You can decide who sees the easy approval offer and who sees the verify identity wall. And to keep credibility intact, I'm not saying your late-night searches get sent straight to your bank and stamped on your credit file. That is not how most underwriting works. But I am saying this: those moments can become signals in the marketing ecosystem, and the marketing ecosystem is big enough to shape financial outcomes indirectly. If you search for help, you may get targeted by high-fee products that live on desperation. If you browse certain topics, you may enter categories that attract more aggressive offers. If you have ever felt like the internet found you at your weakest moment, that is the edge of the system. It does not need perfect control over you. It needs a consistent tilt. Now, because this is a financial historian channel, I want to pull the lens wider, because the data gabelle is not only a consumer story. It is a business story, and it is a wages story. When platforms own the roads where attention travels, they do not just tax users. They tax businesses that need customers. If you run a small business, you have watched organic reach shrink. You have watched an algorithm change and your traffic drop overnight. You have been told to boost posts to reach people who already followed you. You have watched ad costs rise because you were bidding in an auction controlled by the same platform you depend on. That is a toll economy. Medieval merchants paid tolls at bridges and gates to get goods to market. Modern merchants pay tolls to be visible online. And tolls get passed on. Prices rise. Margins shrink. When margins shrink, businesses cut where they can. Often that means wages stagnate or headcount gets squeezed. So even if you personally do not care about privacy as a feeling, you should care about the structure, because structures change how money flows. A society can tolerate a lot when it believes the rules are fair and the future is open. But when people feel priced and sorted in ways they cannot see, trust erodes, and distrust is expensive. It makes every transaction heavier. It makes people cling to the biggest brands because unknowns feel risky. It makes it harder for new competitors to break through, because attention is rented, not earned. That is why the data gabelle concentrates power. Data network effects make the big bigger. More users create more data. More data improves prediction. Better prediction improves monetization. More money buys more advantage, and the flywheel spins. That is the quiet reason antitrust fights keep circling big tech and ad tech. Not because one executive is evil, but because the incentives reward consolidation when the road itself is the product. Now, let us come back down to the human level, because doom without agency makes people click away, and agency is where retention lives. The good news is you do not need to become invisible to lower your personal rate. You just need to stop paying the maximum default. Here are the 3 moves that give you the most protection for the least effort, and I am keeping it tight on purpose. First, treat permissions like cash. If an app does not need always in location, do not give it. If a game wants contacts, say no. If a shopping app wants Bluetooth scanning, ask why. You can always add permissions later when a feature truly needs them. Second, be intentional about logins. The easiest way to track you is to have you signed in everywhere, because a login is a universal ID card. If you do not need an account to read something, do not create one. If you do not need to continue with a major identity provider, do not connect it. Third, when you can afford it, pay for the few services you rely on most. Money can be a cleaner transaction than constant surveillance. It will not make you magically private, but it shifts incentives in your favor. Because a company funded by your subscription is less desperate to squeeze every signal out of your day. And if you want a fourth bonus move that costs nothing, treat your attention like money. The system learns from what you feed it. If outrage always gets your click, outrage will chase you. If you slow down, if you refuse the bait, if you choose longer, calmer information, you lower the collector's yield. That sounds small, but it compounds. And compounding is how ordinary people outlast systems designed for extraction. Now, let me give you one last concrete picture of the middle layer. Because once you can picture it, you stop treating it like magic. You open a simple web page. In the time it takes you to blink, an automated auction can happen behind the scenes. An advertiser bids to show you something. Another advertiser outbids them. The winner gets the spot. That is called real-time bidding. But you do not need the term. Think of it as a medieval auction house that runs at machine speed. To run that auction, the system shares a packet of information about the viewer. Sometimes it is supposed to be anonymized. Sometimes it is a pseudonymous ID. Sometimes it includes location down to a general area. Sometimes it includes categories inferred from browsing. The details vary by platform and by rules, and there are guardrails in some places. But the business logic is consistent. The more precisely the auction knows who you are and what state you are in, the more valuable you are to target, which means the more money flows through the toll booth. That is why the system fights so hard to keep identity linkable. It is why login walls spread. It is why apps became the fortress as web tracking got harder. It is why free services keep nudging you to stay inside one ecosystem where the collector can see the full road. Now here is the part that sounds philosophical, but is actually practical. The data gabelle taxes your ability to change. Prediction markets reward consistency. If the system learns you as the guy who buys when stressed, it will meet you when stressed. If it learns you as the guy who doom scrolls at midnight, it will greet you at midnight. If it learns you as the guy who clicks fear, it will sell you fear. Over time, your environment gets tailored to your past self, because your past self is easier to monetize than your future self. Medieval taxes could trap people physically by keeping them poor. Modern data taxes can trap people mentally by keeping them predictable. And that is why "I have nothing to hide" is the wrong defense. This is not about hiding bad acts. It is about protecting space to be messy and still become better without being chased by the version of you that generated the most profit for someone else. Now I'm going to plant the engagement moment right here before the very end, because I want it to land while you are still in the story. If you know someone who always says, "It is just ads," share this with them and keep it simple. Send it with one line like, "This explains the money side." Because once people understand it as a toll system, the conversation gets clearer and less emotional. And now, we come to the one blunt question, promised. And I want you to answer it in the comments, because it is the fastest way to reveal what kind of digital society you are willing to pay for. If you could pay $10 a month for the core digital services you rely on most, and in return most cross-app tracking and broker resale of personal data stopped, would you take that deal?